Everyone, welcome. We're gonna wait a little bit for our panelists to join. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we'll get Thomas up here, and then we'll get kicked off. There he is. Thanks everyone for tuning into our first T office hours. We've had quite the slew of announcements the last couple of days, so we thought it'd be good to kind of update the community on things from our end. I'm Ben. I kind of spearhead community and socials for T and pkgx. Joined today with Max Howell. He's the CEO of pkgx, which is key contributor to T. And Thomas is the director of T Association. So you guys, Max and Thomas, you want to give a quick intro to yourself here? Remember to unmute.
I'll get started. I'm sure Max is going to unmute shortly. So hi everyone, I'm Thomas, so director of the T Association. Great to be here and be with all of you today for the first office hours. So my background, I've been working predominantly in product management for the past 20 years or so, and focused solely on blockchain for the last 6 years now. Worked at a variety of projects from real-world asset tokenization to custody to travel rule, and now at T, very, very excited by the opportunity, and really fascinated by Max's life story and how the T protocol is there to solve for that very real problem that Max has lived for many years. Max, if you want to do a quick intro as well.
Hey, sorry, I don't know, I lost audio for like the first couple of minutes there. So then suddenly you were saying, "Where's Max?" I'm like, I've been waiting for you. So yeah, thanks Thomas, and thanks everyone for joining today. I got into open source back in 2004 when it wasn't cool, it wasn't sexy. It was something that those of us who were into programming did kind of out of necessity, really. Like, we were all working together, and this is still the case with open source. It's one of the reasons I love open source so much, is that we're trying to make the world just better, like with the little bits that we can do. And software has become such an essential piece of the modern world that it turns out that the work that we've been doing has become like super important and essential to so much of how everything works nowadays. And back in it was 2009 that I created Homebrew, and I was working at this startup in London, and I needed this tool. The work we were doing, I could see this gap where I needed a tool like Homebrew. So I just started working on it, and a few months later I open sourced it and managed to get a bit of attention behind it. And it was phenomenal watching how the software development world just adopted this thing that I thought was good, but I didn't know for sure. And then now, there's 40, 50 million people who use it. It's just a phenomenally successful piece of software. And in that time, I would work evenings and weekends on Homebrew because, obviously, the problem with open source, the problem everybody is aware of, is that people like myself build it, but we've never figured out a way to make it so that is the job that we have. That is our contribution to the world. We have to beg for jobs at regular companies. So my career was one of working full time for big companies like Apple and smaller startups, and trying to find work where I could, to some extent, do some open source, and then quitting and living off my savings and being very frugal in order to work on what I really wanted to do, which is what has led me to T. And I'm just so excited like where we're at now after like 2 years of just such hard work with like truly brilliant people like Thomas, who has allowed like the vision I had for what could be built to solve like this fundamentally difficult and problematic problem. And yeah, I just can't wait for this year. Like this is the time. So thanks everyone who's here on this call. Can't wait to talk more about it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it is the time. With us announcing our dates for ITN, which is our incentivized testnet, which is right around the corner. Why do you guys, maybe Thomas, you can take this question. Why does T need a testnet? What's kind of the overall goal of this testnet moving forward for the protocol, if you don't mind?
No, absolutely not. So, there's really a variety of reasons why, we all believe that a testnet is very important. There's the tech aspect, there's the code aspect. We want to make sure that um, although the contracts are being audited and we're doing code reviews on our end and so on, we need to make sure that the community gets a chance to dive into the code, look at the product itself, and provide some input and potential, like areas of improvements that could be implemented before the code goes live on mainnet. Every time you deal with any type of blockchain implementation, that move to mainnet is a very critical, very pivotal point for the project, given some of the immutability aspects introduced by the technology. And so having a testnet ahead of time and making sure that the community gets a chance to look at the code and provide input is critical. And I would say the second one is, with T, our goal is to make sure that we create a product that is useful and exciting and appealing to a variety of participants, whether they are developers or non-developers. Everyone can contribute to the protocol and have an influence essentially on what the protocol does and how open source projects are being rewarded. Looking at the code of these open source projects as well, submitting vulnerabilities and so on. There's a variety of tools that come into the protocol, and we've started introducing some of them on the new website that went live back in December. But it's looking at all those different tools and functionalities, looking at the personas ranging from developers to non-developers, and making sure that what we have built in terms of a user experience, what we have built in terms of surfacing the capabilities of the protocol to this broad range of users makes a lot of sense. In other words, when we look at what we've built and we put that in front of everyone and we put that in front of all the community, did we hit the mark? What could we do better? What could we tweak to make it much easier for everyone to engage with the protocol, interact with the protocol? Because one of the core aspects of what we do is we're looking at the underlying technology that we're using, which is blockchain, as a tool, not the product itself. The product uses blockchain. Blockchain is not the product. And so it's very important to make sure that we have that continuous feedback from the different participants into the protocol, from the different personas that are going to be interacting with the protocol very early on, so that at the time we launch the mainnet, we've had the opportunity to, one, get feedback on the code, and two, get feedback on the user experience, and obviously implement the changes that make sense for that user experience, and correct the issues identified in the code.
Yeah, I definitely think, for the Web3 native crowd, ease of use and simplicity on, interfaces and things to use has always been a big barrier. And most people in Web3 are are familiar with testnet, but maybe the Web 2 crowd is not exactly. So thanks for covering that. We did, like you mentioned, we did launch our full site back in December and started teasing the testnet. It was right around the corner, early Q1 of 2024. We've collected emails of people that are interested in testnet. So for the people that are interested and want to test this out, what can those people expect to get out of the ITN? And maybe we can talk a little bit. We can kind of go two-part here and talk about what they can expect, along with the importances of the challenges and quests that we are putting out on the bi-weekly basis as well.
Sure. So I can start, and maybe Max, if you want to add something afterwards, by all means, feel free to. So in terms of what people can expect out of ITN, first and foremost, it's essentially access to the entirety of what the team has been building for the last sort of 2 years or so, ranging from the guts of the protocol, the different contracts and the algorithm, the proof of contribution algorithm that was put together to measure, quantify the impact of open source projects across a variety of package managers. So being able to access the full breadth of that proof of contribution, and you can already get a snippet of that on the website by going to t.xyz and checking your project T rank. So access to this, access to all the interfaces to interact with the protocol, access to the core functionalities that were described in the paper. So registration of a project, distribution of rewards to that project, staking of open source projects as well. So I look at the code, I'm satisfied with the quality of the code, and it seems to be like not to have any severe vulnerabilities. I can stake a project, receive rewards for staking that project, with a portion of those rewards going also to the project itself. Testing donations and seeing the donation trickle through all the different dependencies of the project that I'm donating to essentially solve for one of the big issues that was identified, which is donations are great, but they favor sort of the most visible projects, if you will. That dependency that this application that is being donated to relies on typically gets nothing out of it, and that's really something that we've looked to change with the protocol. So it's essentially getting access to the full breadth of the protocol, and to facilitate that and put a little bit of structure, if you will, and guide everyone through how to use the protocol, because it's brand new. We've established sort of set of challenges and quests. So there's going to be a new challenge. We target to have a new challenge every 2 weeks, released during the incentivized testnet. Each challenge includes multiple quests that are sort of predefined actions that every participant is meant to complete. And so the idea behind those challenges and quests is to use a test, stress test, all the different aspects of the protocol. So there's going to be quests on staking. There's going to be quests on changing, like impacting your T rank. There's going to be quests on voting into the DAO, making proposals into the DAO, using different aspects of the interface, making edits to your project as well, changing quorum for your project, and so on and so forth. There's a long list of challenges that have been established, all for the purpose of testing, both usability and scalability of the protocol. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Max, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Thomas. Excellent summary of what we're building for the ITN for sure. Like the things that I'm most excited about is people seeing like how this is different to previous attempts at fixing the problems in open source. Something I frequently say is how open source is often seen as a charity by everybody, from the huge enterprise shops that are very happy that so much of their software stack is freely available and maintained for free. Like there's a famous quote from Jeff Bezos where he was talking about how he intended to build Amazon on top of Linux and thus like cut the costs significantly for what they were trying to build. And like, you know, good on him, he was ahead of that game, right? It took everybody else, including like huge companies like Microsoft, like a long time to realize that actually this open source layer wasn't a liability, that it was a blessing, that it was going to make it so that they could be even more profitable. But open source remained considered a charity. And like what we're building with T Protocol and what people are going to be able to see when they step in to our portal on the day the incentivized testnet goes live, they're going to see that open source is already this pre-existing value system where everybody who's involved in it and the entire software industry has already established like these incredibly important pieces of infrastructure and how important they are. That data's all there. It's been there all this time. And yet nobody's figured out how to build something on top of it that rewards that value. When people step in, like irrelevant if they're developers or open source developers or just people who have suddenly come to understand that the open source ecosystem is an incredibly important and valuable thing, they're going to see that they can participate in this in a way that changes open source away from this charitable system where like maybe you feel generous this month and you're going to drop $10 on a project that you think is exciting. I was talking to an open source developer just yesterday about this, and they were like, well, so effectively people who like my project can stake against it, and then I could build smart contracts on top of that so that I allow people who are staked against my project to participate in the governance of my project, to choose the roadmap of that project, to decide where it's going in future. And I'm not just giving this out to anybody. I'm giving this to people who are actively trying to support my project. It's going to be super interesting to see how people respond to the testnet and what the open source community starts building on top of it, right? Like, let's face it, Web3 is almost entirely open source. And before T, there wasn't enough protocols that were built in a way where the open source community could really actively participate in how that protocol was built and how it's shaped and how it's formed and how it's going forwards. So, you know, I think that we're onto something that is really special for this cycle in crypto that we're going to see come out during the testnet.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Just a reminder for the audience, if we have time, we will get to Q&A at the end. So you can hold off on requesting or start now, and if we have time, we'll get there. But one term that we've kind of talked about a little bit so far that I just kind of want to bring to the surface, and Max, if you don't mind discussing this a little bit, we've said the word, you know, the term we know internally is T rank. Max, if you want to give just a high level overview to the people listening on what exactly T rank is and how it pertains to T protocol.
Yeah, so the initial idea that I had for how T would work was based on this fundamental understanding I had about how open source works. And open source, like, fundamentally is layered upon these tools called package managers. And they're distinctly unsexy things. Honestly, I think everybody who is a developer who understands these things probably hates them. They've certainly gotten better over the years, like I was partly responsible for them improving. Like Homebrew is pretty good overall. Like even if I do say so myself, I think the way it's been responding to over time shows that people agree. But the package managers are the pieces that put together all the open source so that you can build your applications on top of it. So you can contribute to the world in a consumer facing fashion. And open source is millions and millions of projects, right? So these tools are absolutely essential to be able to build. But the other thing that they do is they understand all the connections between the different pieces of open source, because any particular package in the open source graph has often dozens, if not hundreds, of dependencies on other open source packages. And these dependency relationships, it's a kind of trust. If you install a package that maybe renders widgets onto a website like React, for example, the people who build React have trusted these other packages, and you have trusted React. So it's a trust scheme that goes all the way down. And some of these dependency graphs are extremely deep. So we applied that to what we call T-rank. And we use an algorithm that we've been tweaking like incessantly for the last 2 years to determine like which open source packages in that graph are important and which ones are gaining importance, getting there, and which ones deserve the most rewards in this ecosystem. And it's surprising, although not surprising, that often some of the most important packages are ones that people don't really know that well. And that's one of the bigger problems with open source that we are trying to solve, that Thomas was talking about earlier, is that there's huge amounts of it that is falling apart because the people who maintain it are stressed and time constrained and just unable to really do the work that's required, but huge amounts of infrastructure is built on top of it. Like one of the examples I use is core.js, which is maintained by one person, and it's downloaded, I think it's like 1 billion times a month. Pretty much every JavaScript application that exists uses this thing. And a few months back, the guy was like, look, I can't do this anymore. I get almost no sponsorship, no money. This package is used like everywhere, like absolutely everywhere. It's super difficult not to find a JavaScript application that doesn't use it. And nobody sponsors it. Because why don't they sponsor it? Because until I heard about this package, I didn't even know it existed either. It's so deep in that stack. And it's one of the things that T-Rank and T-Protocol solves by changing the incentives for the people who care about open source. We don't change the incentives for the maintainers, because open source works. It's an amazing system that works so well. We just change the incentives for the people who want to make sure that this whole system is sustainable and rewarded. We're adding new incentives in there for the people like myself who have worked so hard on all this infrastructure. I hope that's a good answer for you, Ben.
Yeah, it's great. And while we're on that, how big is the open source economy? Max, do you have any idea?
Yeah, well, the truth is, over the last 20, 25 years, like since the term open source was coined, like open source is actually a little bit older than that. And if you go back, the history is just fabulous. I could talk about it for hours probably, which I'll skip for this particular call, you'll be pleased to hear. But, over the last, especially I'd say the 15 years that Homebrew's been around, open source went from being disrespected, I'd say. Like Web 2 is built on open source, and Web 2 is much like Web 3 now, right? At the time, people thought Web 2 was a joke. And then Web 2 kept building important companies on top of open source, and then it became like the norm. Now we don't even call it Web 2 anymore. It's just the internet. And so as a result, most of the internet is built on open source nowadays. So I personally believe that the value of open source is a proportion of the value of the entire software industry. If you consider that 80 to 90% of almost everything that you use on your phone and the internet, and even things like your Wi-Fi router at home, is open source, then yeah, it's the value of it is proportional to the entire software industry's value of trillions and trillions of dollars.
And what was that tweet we saw the other day, Max, where it was like every $1 spent, I'm gonna butcher this too. For every $1,500 spent, $1 goes to Airbnb, and they were at one time they were the biggest contributors to open source, and that number was like 150,000. I know this was a couple years ago, so it could be more, it could be less today, but just to kind of put that in perspective, it was pretty mind blowing to me to see something like that.
Yeah, like there's several mind-blowing parts to that, right? Like the idea that one in every $1,500 goes to Airbnb. Well, and like that means that 50 cents in every $1,500 is a cleaning fee nowadays. But also the fact that Airbnb were, and probably I think they still are, one of the biggest companies that donate to open source, and their donation was $150,000 a year. And I think it's about that, if not slightly less. And frankly, that's a really good donation. But they are built on a huge amount of open source, huge amount, I know. And partly it's because they also contribute a lot of open source. And some companies justify their lack of donations based on that, right? So like they create open source and sometimes they hire the people who make open source. But there's a huge amount that just isn't compensated in that manner at all. And, I don't think it's really acceptable. And, I get it. I have sympathy for the companies like Airbnb. Like, realistically, how are they meant to support open source? There's millions and millions of projects, and there isn't good systems in place to allow them to do it easily. Like, realistically, Airbnb probably need to hire 20 people full time in order to figure out how to sponsor the open source they consume. And I don't think that's particularly realistic. As someone who is now on the board of directors for a company, I understand how my shareholders would not be particularly happy if I decided to hire 20 people to correctly compensate open source when, that's not in our best interest. They'd be like, well, isn't it free? Why are you paying for it? So you have to change how people think about it. And that's like a fundamental piece of what we're doing here at T, right? We're changing that perception from people away from thinking of it as a charity to thinking of it as something that it's good for them as well. It's not a donation. It's more like they're participating in that value ecosystem in some manner.
Exactly. Thomas, earlier in the spaces you had mentioned with the referencing to challenges and stuff like that, talking about users could potentially get T points. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on that? How do the T points work? What exactly are they? Things like of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. So, what I mentioned earlier is for every for the ITN, there's going to be challenges, 6 challenges, 2 weeks each. That's the goal. And within each challenge, you're going to have quests, and so those quests are going to be sort of specific activities, if you will, that users need to perform, ranging from registration to voting and the likes. And so the way the incentivized testnet works is for each one of these quests that are going to be part of the different challenges, there are specific points that are allocated. So as a participant, for example, if I accomplish actions X, Y, and Z, I'm going to have 100 points plus 200 points plus another 100 points. So I total 500 points. And if another user completes the exact same actions, they're going to get 500 points as well. So as tasks are completed, everyone gets the points associated with the tasks. And at the end of and on an ongoing basis, we're going to have sort of a leaderboard, if you will, of who has collected the most amount of points. So who has accomplished the most in terms of the different quests that are included in the challenges. And so at the end, we'll be able to tally sort of all these points and use that to distribute rewards to all the different participants using the points as a percentage pool, if you will. So as an example, user Bob has accomplished a certain amount of tasks, and Bob gets 1,000 points. And let's say that overall, there's a total of 100,000 points that have been collected across all the different users. Okay, so Bob would essentially get 1% of the rewards distributed to all the ITN participants at the end of ITN. Obviously, we anticipate, way more points and way more participants, but on a Tuesday, around lunchtime, I felt that having a simple 1% calculation was easy to do in my head.
Thank you for that. And then the final thing on ITN before we get to the Michael and talking about the hackathon. Max, who can participate in the incentivized testnet? I know it sounds very dev focused, but I believe I know there are challenges and quests for non-dev focused people. Can you talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. The truth is that I think a lot of Web3 projects are either only for devs or only not for devs. And we have this beautiful project which is for both. And Web3, it's built by these devs. You have to appeal to the devs to make these things work. So we're building something which is going to be just as valuable for everybody. And the devs, obviously, are very important to what we're doing, and that's why we have this outreach program going on right now. There's upfront rewards for people who are onboarded early, who maintain projects with good T rank or a reasonable amount of T rank. And those participants are super important. So certainly calling on the people listening here that if you know some good open source projects, now's the time to bring awareness to what we're doing, so that when the ITN kicks off, it's super ready for everybody else who participates. But there's plenty to do for those who are just interested in what we're trying to accomplish here, who understand that everything that we use on the internet is built on top of this open source software that hasn't been correctly rewarded the people who built it over 10 to 15 years. And things are, they're definitely at a breaking point, more so than ever, where we're getting to the point where it's dangerous to all software that exists in all fields, the nature of the lack of sustainability. So those who just understand that importance, who understand the value of open source, are able to participate in the ITN as well. And there's various quests that are targeted at them specifically, but I'm sure Thomas can talk more on the specific quests and actions that non-developers can take.
Sure. I mean, there's a variety of it, right? So without sort of listing all the quests that are going to be included, we'll publish that as we go. But there's things ranging from creating your account to staking a one or more projects that are registered with the ITN. There's also staking to test the optimum staking ratio that we've implemented and described in the white paper, so that ability or that functionality to make sure that no single package gets the lion's share of the T rank rewards, so that there's a fair distribution across all of them. So, essentially concentrating stake towards one package just to have it cross the optimum staking ratio and come back down. There's really going to be a lot of interactive actions that are targeted for both developers and non-developers during the quest, and we'll have a more comprehensive list of what those are over the coming weeks. But I hope that gave everybody sort of a flavor of what those would include.
Yeah, and we do have a good blog post on our blog. It's t.xyz/blog. that says 10 ways for non-developers to participate in the ITN. So I think if you want more info on that, you could head there. And like Thomas said, we're going to make sure these challenges are spread across all of our channels, whether that's Discord, Telegram, our social media, everything like that. So now is also a good time before we move to the hackathon to plug that we announced yesterday our T forum is live. It's hosted on Discourse. It's forum.t.xyz. This will kind of be the more of a technical hub for people with questions, not only just during testnet, but throughout our entire journey here with T. So head over there. It's live. Anyone can join, and it's just another spot for our community to kind of grow together, ask questions on technical stuff, just really anything. So with that, we will, unless Thomas or Max, unless you guys have anything more that you want to talk about testnet, we can move to Michael for a quick talk about our hackathon that went live on Monday.
I just wanted to. All right.
Sorry, go ahead, Max. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the things that I love about what we're building is just how usable it is. So expect something that it's going to really cross that boundary. Like I think in Web3, we all know that Web3 can be super intimidating for people who are not familiar with it, like wallets and bridging and smart contracts and signing and understanding like all the different tokens. And we've worked so hard to try and abstract around that while still making it accessible to people who do understand those things already. And part of the reason we've done that is because we know that a lot of our audience is going to be these open source devs who so far have not found the hook into Web3 to understand why they need to participate. And part of the reason we've done it is because someone needed to do this. And so I hope that you'll look forward to seeing just how we're trying to advance that aspect of the Web3 market and talk to people about it, right? Tell people about what they can expect, because I do believe it will blow you away. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. And yeah, I was just gonna. Now I feel like I would be echoing your sentiment, but very very much excited to get everyone's input on what we've built and really taking a very different perspective on open source as Max described before. So to leave everyone some time for Q&A at the end, I'll just leave it there and pass it to Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. And I just want to give a rundown on the hackathon that we're doing in partnership with pkgx and what we're going to be expecting from developers when they're ready to submit their projects for the hackathon. So based on the article that we published out, the judging criteria will be innovation, it'll be accuracy, usability, customization, and documentation. So we really want to make sure that the work that developers will be putting into the hackathon is going to be high quality and something that could be used even beyond the hackathon, could be used by the community, could be used by us, could be used by them, even after that, once the hackathon is done. So with innovation and use of AI slash ML, we want to see how you as developers use, whether it's OpenAI, OpenLlama, or any AI model that you're going to be using, or any AI toolkit that you're going to be using to develop the smart contract auditing software. We just want to see how far you're going to take it and how accurate it's going to be in identifying issues. Recently in the Web3 community, if everyone has been keeping tabs on bridging, there has been an exploit with socket bridging. So this is a tool that could identify exploits like that. It was an exploit where the input that users were inputting wasn't being validated properly. So a tool like this could identify exploits like that and other ways that smart contracts could be hacked. And one thing that I personally believe in is documentation. So we want to make sure that the thing is the project that you're going to put out there is going to be usable and clearly understood by people, by us when we're judging, by other developers when they decide to use your hackathon submission, and even by maybe your team members that come on later. So when submitting, please make sure that your source code is properly formatted, there's proper documentation, and you provide a demo video just showing us how the project works and how we can go about testing it. And if necessary, please provide API keys if you're using OpenAI or any other AI API. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. So now we have time for some Q&A. If anyone wants to come up, that would just request and we'll let you on stage. Also, just a couple of reminders while we wait for those. First off, this is recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to go back and listen or you weren't able to make it today, that'll be there. Also, we won't answer any questions. This is kind of just a blanket statement. Won't be answering any questions on price, token price, or anything like that. So we'll give it a couple minutes. I don't know, Max, Thomas, if you guys have anything else you want to add. If we don't get any requests, I've seen some have fallen off that requested earlier. So if you have any questions, just hit that request. We'll let you on stage. Otherwise, Max and Thomas, if you have anything else you want to add, we'll give people a couple minutes before we wrap up.
Yeah, I can talk on the hackathon stuff a little bit while we wait. So, one thing I have a beef with in current open source AI tooling is that they declare themselves open source, and then when you look into it a little bit, it's actually just a small user interface around the OpenAI APIs. Now, I get it. OpenAI are providing the most thorough AI that exists. Nothing that has been released open source is at the level of GPT-4, although they're closing in if you're paying attention. So I'm obviously going to be much, let's not say much more, but I am going to be impressed by efforts for this hackathon that are local AI using. And especially if you can fine tune one of the existing large language models, like perhaps the Mistral one is probably one of the variants of the Mistral that you can find on a Hugging Face. Fine tune it onto understandings of smart contract issues. Now that would be super great, and also extraordinarily valuable to the entire Web3 space. So excited to see what people will come up with for sure.
All right, great. Looks like we don't have any questions, so everything you guys said must have been very clear, and everyone understands what we're trying to accomplish here. Thomas, do you want to go with any parting thoughts?
Sure. I mean, definitely excited to get everyone's input on what we've built, and there's venues, including discourse and Discord for people to engage with us and engage with the broader community as well, to either in preparation for the incentivized testnet or during the incentivized testnet. And so, it's really I'm very much looking forward to hearing the comments from everyone, the constructive criticism that I'm sure we'll be receiving over the course of the incentivized testnet and mainnet after that. We believe that we've built something that has managed to utilize some of the latest development in blockchain to abstract the chain as much as possible and make that experience as Web 2-ish as it possibly could be. We're making use of things like account abstractions and having multi-sig, signed multi-sig. So there's some very sort of sophisticated things that have been integrated into the protocol, which also speaks to the challenge that was put in front of the engineering team to get it built. But all this really will only matter if everyone on the community is happy and able to engage with the protocol in a way that's very simple and very straightforward. And so please make sure to really give it a good shake and provide your input on any of the on the challenge of your on the channel of your choosing, so that we can continue to make the product better and better, continue to improve usability, continue to improve functionality. And in the meantime, if anybody has questions, feel free to engage with us on the various channels that we have listed.
Max, any parting words?
Nothing further, apart from just a general ask that everyone's excited about the project. Continue to pay attention to what we're putting out there and help spread the word. Like, this has a real chance to be one of the biggest projects this year, is my sincere belief. Obviously, every person in my position probably says that, but I was skeptical going into this project. And over time, I've come to see that we have built the right tools with the right people for the right people. And it just could be something phenomenal. And part of that is the community participating and getting us there. So go out and spread the word. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. Community has helped drive project. And like Thomas and Max said, input is always appreciated on our end from the community. We want to make this the best out there. And one of the ways we can do that is by seeking community input and thoughts. One thing before we sign off, I do want to mention we being T will be at ETH Denver. I think it's February 29th through March 3rd. So we have a booth. So if you're going to be around, swing out and see us and talk to us. We'd love to have conversations with you. We're going to be out spreading the good word. So come stop by, say hi. As always, you can check us out. We're on Twitter right here. Check out our website, t.xyz. Our T forum is forum.t.xyz. So check that out as well. Thanks everyone for your time. We look forward to the future, everything we can build and accomplish and help advance open sources as well as we can. So Thomas, Max, and Michael, thank you guys for your time. Thanks to the community again, and we will catch you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.